I am Annie.
I'm Jonathan.
I'm Oscar.
I'm Alejandro.
And this is my true story.
April 2017, I was offered a position as a lifeguard, and I needed to get a certain certification, and so I went and I did that with the Red Cross. March 23rd, 2018 is when those skills finally came in handy.
So I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago that our church decided to start a City of Jerusalem walkthrough thing, that it was just going to be just such a staple thing that we would do every other year in the community, just to really get people to just learn about the person of Jesus and ultimately his death and resurrection. And I remember the first time we did it, it was just such a huge success. We had over 800 people come out. We got a really positive response out of it. It was just really exciting to have accomplished something like that, and we knew that we had to do it again. And so this year, Easter, we decided we were gonna do it again, but we were gonna make it even grander. Gonna just be a lot more intentional with how we would market this. Because we really felt like this was, not only was it a neat idea, something that brought our church together, but also something that would bring the community together and at the same time be able to experience the death and resurrection of Jesus. And it took about 2.5 months to build the whole city. We do it on just a huge grass lot that's right next to our church. It's the size of about half a football field, and just like anything that you would experience, maybe going to a Disney park and one of their walkthroughs, we were trying to craft that same feel, and where you would feel like you're literally walking through the old Jerusalem.
Yeah, so one of the scenes that was part of the production and the walkthrough was the scene of Judas towards the end. And if you don't know the story of Judas, he was the one who betrayed Jesus, and this is the scene that Javier was playing in the production, and he was gonna show that he had just betrayed Jesus, and he sort of find out that Jesus was God, and he came to save us. So he was sort of frustrated, and he was upset, and he just wanted to hang himself. This is what the Bible says, and we were gonna portray that and show that to people, that what Judas did. And this is the scene that Javier was playing.
We had Javier, who was playing Judas. He was just really, really excited to do his part. I remember being there in rehearsals, and he was just giving it 100%, to the point where sometimes we had to tell him to tone it down a little bit. But he was just really, really excited to be part of something like this. Javier is originally from Cuba, and his family lives in Cuba. What happened with him was that our pastoral family kind of adopted him, just to even help him and give him an opportunity of furthering his education here in the United States, and and pursuing some of the dreams that he's always had, like, just even to be a doctor. And so even as a church, I felt like we adopted him as well, and we knew, his story, and this was a kid who also grew up in church, and he's always had a serving heart. And from the get-go, he just really dived in and has started helping out. He started helping out with the youth, and even in worship as well, like being part of the worship team, and like it got to the point where he was like involved in a little bit of everything at the church. So everyone knew him, everyone loved him, and for something like this to happen to to him, I think that's why even like brought a lot of us to asking like these tough questions.
Yeah, it's crazy to go back through the thoughts and through everything that happened. Easter 2018.
So this whole event happened on Friday. It was the Friday week before the Easter weekend.
Man, God knew from the beginning that this day would come. God knew from the beginning that God had it all planned out. In His sovereign plan, He already knew what was going to happen.
My job originally for that night, because I'm part of the sound ministry at our church, so I know how to run all the audio controls and all that. I was originally supposed to be for the crucifixion scene, the scene before the Judas and Peter scene. But it's so crazy that same night, the opening night, this kid who was supposed to come in and do the sound for Javier's scene, he couldn't make it. He actually got sick that same day, and he just felt really ill and couldn't make it. And so Herbie, the president of the sound team and all that, he said, hey, you're gonna go there and you're gonna do the sound. And I remember Javier very anxious and very nervous about just the whole thing, because he'd never done anything like that before.
And I remember I was standing in the evangelism table, just letting people know, hey, the first group in Spanish came in, let us be excited, this is what we're gonna do, this is what's gonna take place, kind of running back and forth. And again, now I sit back and it's like, wow, I was doing everything under my power, and God was just sitting there knowing what was going to happen. The things that will change our lives for everybody that experienced what happened there.
Where I was at, I was actually one of the guides in the groups, and I wasn't even supposed to be where I was at, but just how it came about, how the Lord had it that way. The scene occurred.
I was covered by this like little structure that we had made, but I could still see him, with the corner of my eye, and I saw that he did really good, and I started lowering the music and doing my job, and I looked over, and there was just something weird that was going on.
And I remember running into one of the guides, and she was like, hey Annie, can you go back and tell this actor whose name was Javier, can you go tell him to just not do it as real? Some of the people in the audience were just thinking that maybe this was happening for real. And so I was like, okay, let me go tell him to kind of relax and take it back a notch.
When we heard the sounds of ambulance and police sirens, we started to start to question what's did something happen? I remember I actually kind of got a little bit upset. I was like, wow, perfect timing for sirens to go off while we're doing this walkthrough, because I was having trouble hearing some of the actors do their part. I remember one of the pastors coming in and telling us hey, you guys need to get out of the city. Police are here. We had an incident.
There was just something weird that was going on. I heard these guttural noises, and I had no idea what to do. Every part of me wanted to go and check in on him, and and try and help him, but I couldn't. I couldn't. And even the audience too was so crazy. Like, I looked over and they couldn't do anything either. Like, they didn't do anything, and we all heard, some of the noise that he was making. And towards the end of about maybe 3 to 4 minutes, that he was hanging on that noose, that like I said, towards the end, his body started banging against the wall, and you would hear the noises and just banging and banging against the wall. And as soon as the audience left, I saw the last member leave to go on to the next scene, the crucifixion scene. I ran over from my little corner, and I went to go check on him. I was like, Javier, are you okay? Javier, are you okay? And his body was stopped banging against the wall, and he was just hanging there. His feet were draped like towards the edge of the platform, and it was scary, man. And I saw his eyes rolled back. I was like, oh man. And when he wasn't responding, and I touched him a couple times, I was like, yeah, this guy's not okay. I gotta go help him out. And I hoisted him up the first time, from the noose like that, and it didn't work out. Second time, getting close, and the third time was able to get him off, and I laid him on to the platform, and I started trying to check for a pulse. But that's the crazy thing they teach you in CPR, the lifeguarding course, the CPR, that to check for a pulse. And that's scary, because they don't teach you what it feels like to not have a pulse. And by that point, some other people had come, and we were trying to just slap him awake and see if it was that.
So as I was on my way to go tell him, I see a group of people pulling him out.
And then I remember, one of the ladies in our church congregation, she comes up to me. She's just like crying, and she's like, hey, like, Javier hung himself, like, when he was doing his part. I don't know what happened. She just started crying on my shoulder, and I was just in shock. I was like, it's hard to believe, because my brother was playing Judas, but in English, and I have seen it rehearsed time and time and again, and this was something that was supposed to be foolproof, where there was no literal hanging or anything of the sort. Like, they would just kind of like hop off a little platform.
The illusion is, once he steps off this platform that's about like maybe 3 or 4 inches off the ground, he's gonna step off onto this other one, and it's not gonna hurt him.
And you would see like the noose kind of tense up a little bit, but nothing to the point where it would affect your breathing or anything like that. And so it was just really hard to believe, something like that would ever happen.
And at that point, I honestly felt like the Holy Spirit kind of took over, even just like my thinking. So I'm a nurse, and I am just trained to, in these situations, be calm, to be effective. And but it's just different when you are being involved with somebody that you know personally, something completely different.
As soon as someone said, oh, I think he's unconscious, then that's something that clicked in my head, because that was the other thing that I learned in the CPR course, that the biggest mistake everyone makes is that they don't call 911. In emergencies, they do not call 911. And I was like, I'm not gonna let this happen, and I called 911. And so some other people were trying to get him out, and then that's when Annie comes over to the side, and she starts doing CPR with Adley, who's a firefighter.
But man, we saw God's grace in it, and that the Holy Spirit, that's the only way that I can explain it. The Holy Spirit really took over, just like my thinking and my actions. I remember running to where they were pulling him out, and I said, hey, I need to take a look at him really quick. It was pitch dark, but within like seconds, somebody had a phone, and they put some light in his face. And let me tell you, when I saw Javier, his image and his face is like burned in my head, in my mind. Like, that night I couldn't sleep. Just his physical state suggested that he was dead. He did not have a pulse. He was not breathing. He was lifeless. He was beyond the point of being cyanotic. So cyanotic means that you're blue, you're lacking oxygen. He was way past that stage. He was gray. And I remember looking at him and thinking, wow, this guy is dead. But God is so good that, like I said, he just calmed me down, and I was being just very effective in the training that I had. I said, okay, well, we need to start doing compressions. We did it. There was one other guy that could really help me out, that he was a firefighter, and I called for his name, and he was right behind me. So God, just even how he had the right people at the right time, at the right place, was just amazing. And we saw God's hand and his grace even in the middle of that chaos. So he came over. I immediately told the people around us, start praying right now. Call the ambulance, call 911, but start praying. So we did. We started doing compressions. It seemed like forever, honestly, but it was probably less than 5 minutes. So we were doing compressions until the police officers got there. They joined in and helped us out doing CPR. Then when the remaining police officers got there, they kind of took over. And so me and the other gentleman stepped back, and I just remember like looking at everything and just like losing it. Like, what in the world just happened? Like, this is crazy, you know. We had planned out for the night to be something completely different, for us to really just reach out and be, witnesses to others about Jesus. And here we are, in the other side, and having that happen to us. So yeah, that was cool how we were just able to see in the midst of that chaos, in the midst of that nightmare of that night. God's grace in the middle of it.
Yeah, just like what was even told to me from my brother personally, who was he was playing Judas in the English walkthrough, and after that scene was over, after the crowd that was in the first group moved on to like the next scene, and that scene was empty, my brother came around the corner, just to like catch up, catch up with him, like ask like, hey, how'd it go? Like, how did you feel? And my brother comes around and he sees Alejandro just, trying to like not only lift up Javier to take his head off of the noose, but also like at the same time trying to wake him up. And my brother comes in and he tells me that he saw that, and then Alejandro's like, hey man, I need your help. He's not responding. I remember my brother telling me like, in that whole process, like just being there and, seeing all these signs of him not having a pulse, being lifeless. And he also smelled, smelled poop. Like his body was showing all the signs of a dead person. And
when I looked at Javier, he was pale, eyes rolled back, tongue sort of sticking out, and all I kept hearing was my wife just giving compressions, and I'm like, what did just happen? I mean, this is like the first scene. Like I said, we were all ready, all prepared, and I'm like, it's going through my mind, like, what is going on here? Like the whole world came crashing down, and that one moment, it was just very, very loud. It was just a chaos.
After Annie came in and the other guy started doing compressions, like he just felt there was nothing more that he could do, and he just ran out and just started praying for resurrection, because that's all you could really pray for, like at that moment.
I had never seen my church pray the way that they did. Everybody was on their knees in the parking lot, literally crying out to the Lord for Javier's life.
I just saw like a people like, gathering together and just crying out to the Lord in a way I never saw before.
I just see them come out, and we all broke down in tears, just crying, and I remember, wow, people laying down all over the parking lot, just praying, and I've never seen that. I never seen that in our church, and I've never experienced that. People just yelling and crying out to God for Javier and his life, and for God to do a miracle. on his life, but yeah, he was not breathing. Ambulance, like I said, ambulance finally got there, and all I kept hearing is, there is no pulse, there is no pulse. Many times in the Bible we hear of David crying out, and we probably say like, yeah, David cried out, but that night it really hit me what it means to cry out to God, because we were all literally just crying out for a miracle.
I think it was because I actually had, my eyes on him, and I saw what had happened, and I saw his physical state. I didn't think that he was going to make it. I thought he was dead. And I was already praying for, Lord, just kind of help us with the aftermath and the funeral arrangements and what this is going to mean to our church. I seriously thought that, not because I didn't think that God could do the miracle, but maybe because of what I had seen. I didn't think that he was going to survive. Later on, that same night, they told us they had found a pulse, and obviously I was like, okay, great. So now he's going to be in a vegetative state. We had calculated, maybe conservatively, that he went without oxygen anywhere from like 8 to 10 minutes conservatively. And clinically, you can't be without oxygen for 4 to 5 minutes without having permanent brain damage. So that right there, it's like, okay, he has a pulse, great, but now his quality of life is going to be very poor. So yeah, I was praying, God, if this is it, then just take him. I know that he's a believer. I know that he has put his trust in you, Christ, and that he is your son. So if this is it, Jesus, then just take him.
We were just filled with so many questions. Fellow brothers and sisters asking like, why him? This was a kid that, like his family doesn't even live in this country. He's so young, and he was just starting out his life. He had recently come from Cuba and was just trying to, make something here, and for something like this, like a freak accident to happen, and it just seemed so, I don't know, unfair.
The ambulance went away, and all we heard was apparently that they had a small pulse, but we didn't know if that was true or not. And I just remember that, our church, and after all the preparation and after everything that we did, became a crime scene, meaning like, police needed to know what was going on.
Yeah, so given the nature of the incident, that he accidentally hung himself, the police officer were investigating to see if maybe it was a possible suicide or that there was some foul play. So the whole area was, a crime scene. So they took away the noose that we had used, and what else? I think we had a fog machine they took away as well. And they had to interview everybody who was there. The whole area was blocked off. Nobody can leave, nobody could come in, just the police officers, and everybody who was in the scene or had to do with the scene, or had any contact with Javier were questioned, for sure.
And I just remember coming home with my brain was just tired, tired of the chaos, and with many questions. Lord, what's going on? What are you telling us through this? I know you are a sovereign God, and you don't do anything by mistake. But at this time, give us answers, because we don't know.
Saturday, we were just being updated about little things that they noticed. But yeah, little movements that he was doing could have been just muscle spasms, nothing solid. It was great. It was great to hear all of that. But even still, just myself thinking, that's awesome. But I know he's possibly not going to be the same. He's not. He might just be a vegetable the rest of his life. I don't know. I know it was even a lack of faith on my end, and but yeah, the Lord was even worked in that in all of us. And then later on, towards Saturday night, like just more definitive movement. Like they were probably asking him like, hey, if you can hear me, like squeeze your hand, and he was able to respond to that. And so they knew there was brain function, and that update is just like, amazing. And that was Saturday, and I remember just holding on to that little bit.
So yeah, the whole Saturday we were praying nonstop. Still, we had different things that we had to do as a family that Saturday, but throughout all of our errands and throughout all of our activities, we were still praying for Javier, still praying. And then here comes Sunday. I still felt like our church was just really united. We were praising the Lord, and honestly, our attitude was, whatever may come, God, what I'm saying, we will still praise you. We will still, be willing to be used by you. And that was our attitude Sunday morning.
That Sunday, I was gonna lead worship. It felt really heavy because how do you kind of lead a church like that had just experienced something like this into worshiping? Like maybe that's the last thing you want to do after something like this. But that Sunday's worship was just amazing. It was from the updates and everything that we were hearing, it was a genuine response to what the Lord was doing. And so I remember after, it was towards our second service, which was our Spanish service, getting updated that like he had woken up from his coma. I look back and we read through Exodus 14, when God leads his people through the Red Sea, and then in chapter 15, just after they had seen everything and God had closed the sea on top of their enemies, the Egyptians, their natural response was to start worshiping the Lord. And that's exactly what happened even that morning. Like when we got updated on that he had woken up, it was just such a natural response, and it was just amazing to witness that and to be part of that.
But the biggest one was like later on that day, they were like, oh, we extubated him and now he's eating. And I was like, what in the world? Like, this is crazy. He was dead. He was gone. Like I said, he had no life. He was like a shell of a body. He was not responsive. He was irresponsive. He was not breathing. He had no pulse. He was gone. He was not him. And then to see him that he's eating and he's awake and he's talking, it was just amazing.
Yeah, so even as the days went on, just being updated that he was able to start eating, he was laughing, he was having just conversations. He didn't really remember much of what happened, and they would in a very careful way just kind of like, hey, do you remember this, or having done that? And it was funny because he would joke around. He's like, I just remember eating like some soup and I got some stomach ache and that's why I'm here, and just to for him to joke around like that, this is like who we knew him to be, just like this lovable, funny guy.
We kept getting updates throughout the week, that he was eating, that he was talking, that he was sort of remembering people's names. My wife and I, we went to visit him at the hospital, and he was talking and alive, and I was still like, what just happened here, in shock that he was dead and now he was alive.
The doctors themselves, I went to visit him too, they were saying that recoveries like this, they don't ever happen. No one's out of the ICU in 3 days, and that's the time he was out at. It's more common that you're in the ICU for weeks at a time after something so horrific to your body. But, this kid, he was out. And it's crazy too, like, he had a bruise on his neck from, being on the news for so long, but in like a week, it was all gone.
So, speaking to Javier now and interacting with him and entering into conversation with him, he absolutely, you wouldn't be able to tell what happened. He would just, it would just be him telling you what happened. You could not notice from speaking to him what had happened to him at all. So, 100% recovery.
The fact that there's no brain damage after being dead for so long, like, there's nothing short of a miracle.
So then the next week, Easter weekend, on Easter Sunday, he made his, I guess, his first appearance.
So the Sunday that we celebrated, Jesus' resurrection, we were able to witness true resurrection.
And what better way to recount even the resurrection story than to witness one happen before your eyes. That's incredible. Yeah, it was just so amazing because it looked like nothing ever happened to him. He was the same guy. He wasn't weird at all, like nothing. And I feel like we were kind of, even in all of that, it's crazy. We were expecting, things to be off with him but no, man, 100% recovery. Joking around, just smiling, maybe not really even understanding like the full picture, like the entirety of what happened. But yes, it was just so amazing to witness that.
Mi nombre es Javier y esta es mi verdadera historia.
Recuerdo que cuando yo entré, muchas personas me empezaron a abrazar, se echaron a llorar y todas me decían: recuerda lo que Dios hizo en tu vida. Sí fue fuerte para mí, porque no solo para mí, para mi familia. Mi mamá sufrió mucho y todavía eso le va a quedar para siempre, eso le quedó marcado a ella y ella siempre me está recordando eso, que ella no durmió, ella estuvo orando desde que se enteró de lo mío y estuvo orando y llorando arrodillada. Estuvo 2 noches arrodillada sin dormir y sin comer nada. Ella no se levantaba del piso. Y eso impactó mi vida porque mi mamá, ella es cristiana, pero ella no estaba yendo a la iglesia. Y algo de lo que marcó eso fue que conocí a mami en realidad en los caminos del Señor, porque se entregó completamente y comenzó a ir a la iglesia, y eso marcó mucho mi vida.
It shows that God is not only a God of the present, but He's a God of the past, present, and future. He's got all things working towards His goodness and towards His glory, and it just shows the fact that, I wasn't able to get a job as a lifeguard right away. He knew He was having me ready, getting me ready to do something big for Him. That kid, he would get sick. That kid who got sick, he was actually a middle schooler, a 6th grader. There's no way he would have been able to, I'm not trying to brag, but respond in the way that I was able to, or not even able to have the strength to get him off the noose. So yeah, just another little detail too that just so interesting, just the way that God works is one of the other things that I do because of sound ministry that I'm involved in is also like the visuals. Like, we change the lights and all that, and I have to work with the computers, and one of the passwords to the computer is the address of the church. And it's just so interesting that that God, He had me call 911 because had someone else had to do that, you know, they wouldn't be able to tell them the address. Not many people know the actual location of the church, and you know, just being in such a position just shows again that God, he's big into the details.
So I was one of the guides, and we had two different groups. We would have a Spanish group and an English group, which we did bilingual the whole walkthrough. And I was one of the English guides. So we had a Spanish group come in, and the next group was supposed to be an English group. So it was me and another young lady, and I looked at her and I said, "Hey, I can start it if you want." And she said, no, I'll go. And I said, "Are you sure I can go? I don't mind." She goes, "No, I'll go." So she was the one who started the second scene, the English scene. And if I were the one who had started that group, I would have been across like the whole setup, like the whole city of Jerusalem. I would have been a completely opposite end, because by the time Javier's scene was happening, that first group was in like, I think the first or the second scene, and Javier's scene, I want to say, was like the fifth or the sixth, like towards the end. So I would have been on the other side. So I wasn't supposed to be in there where I was at. And actually the other gentleman who helped me out to do compressions was supposed to be like two scenes down as well. And he was one of the ones who pulled him out. So out of just the actors who were acting in the city of Jerusalem, probably him and I were the only ones who, if anything, were trained to know what to do if we were facing that situation. And that's where we saw God's hand, because we were right there. I was also there because I was an extra. If I wasn't a guide, the director had us as extra, like the guides as extras in other scenes. And I didn't want to be in that particular scene because the other extra scene was where my kids were. So I wanted to be in that one. But they were like, "No, we need you in this one." I think if I would have spoken up, they would have, "Okay, go with your kids." But I didn't say anything, so I was like, "Okay, I guess we're gonna be here." And again, it worked out that way. And yeah, even just like the actual other guide from that first group, how I ran into her and she was like, "Hey, can you go look for Javier because he needs to tone it down a notch?" And I was then on my way to go see him when they were pulling him out. So
being part of the marketing team, we had come up with like just different strategies on you know, how we were going to get the word out about this event, and yeah, just like posting flyers, you know, making these invitation cards. And we had an idea of just about how much people were going to be attending, because we had people registering for the event, you know, just to avoid like a huge crowd coming in and having to place them in groups. Like people were kind of scheduled a time slot for the walkthrough. And I think we had calculated we were going to be receiving just a little bit over 1,000, maybe hitting 1,500, just about, which was huge for us because compared to the first time we did it, we'd be reaching a lot more people. Yeah, the first night, the first group, you know, this happens. The city shut the whole thing down, and you know, we were kind of left in a very gray area where we're like, but God, like you know, you're performing this miracle, and yet like we're not able to continue to share your story, like this story. After something like this happens, it's not easy for people to be quiet about it. And so, just members of the church, even people that were there that night, that witnessed everything, they were, you know, they let their friends and family know like what happened. And I even remember it was a few months back when someone asked me what church I congregate at, and I told them, and they're like, "Hey, wasn't that church that some kind of freak accident happened in Easter?" And I was like, wow, like words really gotten out. Like even people like I'm still meeting today, like bring up what happened that night.
Sé que mi historia impactó mucho. La misma señora del banco, yo le se le contó mi historia, no sé por dónde, no sé cómo fue que se enteró de mi historia, pero recuerdo que cuando yo fui al banco, que tenía a arreglar algo con mi tarjeta de crédito, yo recuerdo que la señora me dijo que había oído de lo que me sucedió. Entonces ella me abrazó y también se echó a llorar. Y dice que eso fue un milagro de Dios. Y eso también le marcó su vida. La verdad marcó la vida de muchas personas.
We planned for like 1,000 to 1,500 people coming to this event, and but the Lord had different plans, and he was able to he was able to have such a greater reach than we could ever have with this story, and so I know this has had a global reach. People in in all different types of countries, just through family, they know about this story, and so that's something that we definitely would not have been able to do on our own. That's only something God can do. Because he said, like, hey, what happened that Friday night is enough, and I'm gonna use that and that alone. And so I look back and you hear these stories about these people, like, I just felt like I wasn't able to move, I wasn't able to do anything. I would even say, like, that was God ordained too, because at the end of the day, the only person that was going to be taking all the glory for this work was going to be God. Because imagine if someone might have like stepped up, if someone might have maybe done CPR sooner, or taken him off the noose sooner, and he would have come back to life then, and there would be kind of like that the human side of us would praise that person, like, man, thank God that you were there and that you were able to save his life. But we were put in a situation where we felt at the end of the day, when they carried him off to the hospital, that we were not able to do anything. We weren't able to do nothing more. And so our dependency on God just grew so great then. And when he started to work in Javier's life, and when he brought him back, because he was dead, there was no one else to give that that praise to but to God alone. And so I just even thank God that it happened the way that it happened, because we have no one else to put this on but him.
It also showed me that there's just such a power in prayer and coming collectively and getting down on our knees. Like, it doesn't matter where you are, just get down on your knees and pray to him. And that's what we did. And that's, regardless of what those firefighters did, I know without a shadow of a doubt in my heart, that's what brought him back to life. The power of prayer and putting in Jesus Christ's hands, because our hands, they couldn't have done what happened to him. Couldn't have brought him back.
God brought him back to life, and that's the miracle that we pray for.
We witnessed this miracle, but also I feel like God was also working in our hearts, and in and in like what we even believed that he could do.
We can see a lot of miracles in the Bible. We see tons of them. And the Bible is very clear in that God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and he never changes. I feel like when we see miracles, again, it's God saying, I'm here, I have a purpose, I'm still sovereign. I guess for me, it's just looking at that and saying, God, you are not ever outside of things. Like the Bible says, not a leaf falls without God, ordaining it and wanting it to happen. And not just... maybe just not questioning God and saying, God, you, even through, nightmares like this, you are absolutely, like, my God is still 100% in control. And ways to show us that, again, the results of these things happening completely outweigh, you know what I'm saying, the pain and the suffering.
It's like, who would ever want to go through something like this? But man, I thank the Lord that He allowed me to even experience something like this, because it just helped me grow in my understanding of just how great and how sovereign and how good our God is. And I feel like a lot of us maybe had areas in our life that, you know, we kind of go through the motions. We go to church Sunday, we come out, you know, nothing really changes, and then God, you know, uses something like this to remind us that, you know, He is still the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and He's a miracle working God.
Sinceramente, eso ha marcado mucho para mi vida. Eso ha marcado mucho para mi vida de tal modo que me he dado cuenta de las cosas que hace Dios. Cuando uno realmente, Dios tiene un propósito en tu vida,